Cops try to arrest black CIA agent in disguise. The shocking twist that left everyone speechless. Imagine being handcuffed on a busy city street, every eye watching every phone recording, but no one believing who you truly are. What happens when the very people sworn to protect you become the biggest obstacle? Today's story is about a woman who faced suspicion, doubt, and danger, all because of a broken taillight. But just when it seemed like her fate was sealed, an unexpected arrival turned everything upside down. Stay with me, because this is not just a story of injustice. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the truth hides in plain sight, and courage comes in the quietest moments. The sun was still clinging to the edge of the horizon when Officer Marcus Hayes hit the BL. That was the plan. He ran his hand. "Ma'am," he said, approaching the driver's side window. "The license." She handed over a small leather wallet without hesitation. "Your name, ma'am?" "Nina Carter." Marcus flipped open the ID. There was a photo of her, a federal seal, and a Nina didn't flinch. "It's legitimate." "What's the agency?" Marcus asked sharply. "You do?" Marcus narrowed his eyes. Is this a still no shift in her tone? "It's not fake." He walked back to his cruiser and radioed dispatch. "Hey, I need an extra unit. Pulled a woman in a black S. Les, ma'am, I need you too." Saint Nina exhaled softly, unbuckled her seatbelt, and opened the door. One of the rookies moved toward her. "I'm going to have to place you in cuffs for now," he said. "You're making a mistake," Nina said calmly. "You can explain that at the station." People on the sidewalk began to slow down. A couple pulled out phones. One woman whispered, "Is she being arrested?" Another man started film. Nina didn't argue. She simply turned and allowed her wrists to be cuffed. Her blazer shifted slightly, revealing Marcus caught it but didn't say anything. She was calm. Too calm. That bothered him more than if she'd screamed. But Marcus hadn't seen. Nina stood with her hands behind her back, the cuff cinched just tight enough to leave a M. The one on her left looked nervous, bouncing slightly on the balls of his feet. The one behind. Mark. "You live around here?" he asked. "I was just passing through." "Shh. Where were you headed?" "Back home." "Where's home?" She looked at him directly. "IT." He stepped closer. "Listen, you might you have everything that irritated him, not just her one of two." "Step back," one of the rookies called out. But the small crowd wasn't moving. 5P. Nina didn't speak, didn't flinch, just stood still. Marcus tapped his radio. "Dispatch." A pause. Static. "Still checking. Nothing coming up in the regular database." He stepped away, jaw tight. "Did you pat her down?" "Not yet." "Do it." As the rookie stepped forward, Nina finally said something. "I wouldn't do that." "Why is that?" She turned slightly toward him, just enough for her voice to carry. "Because if you put your hands on me, you mig the R. Is that a threat?" "No, it's a statement." That was when they heard its screeching tires. 2 black SUVs, no lights, no sirens, just... The doors swung open. 4 men in suits stepped out. No hesitation, no discussion. They moved like they'd rehearsed this 100 times. The tallest one flashed a badge. "Fade, that woman is in our custody. Release her immediately." Marcus stepped forward. "I don't know who you think you are, but we haven't confirmed her identity. Until we do, she stays." The tall man stepped in closer. "You're standing on the edge of a serious federal incident. I suggest you let her go before it becomes something bigger." Another man whispered something into the rookie's ear behind Nina. Whatever he said made the young officer's shoulders drop like lead. He turned. The rookie looked at Marcus, eyes wide, but didn't say a word. Marcus felt these were real. He'd seen that badge before once. The man who whispered turned to Nina. "Are you okay, Agent Carter?" She gave a small nod. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small D. Confirmed, he said. Mar. The tall man looked at him for a moment. She works for people who don't carry business cards. But just as one layer peeled back, another began to crack wide open. Because not everyone on that sidewalk had pure intentions. One of the Nina's wrists calm. Not because she wasn't scared, but because she'd clearly be. The agent who had scanned her ID gave a quiet nod, and the rookie officer behind her moved first. He stepped forward, hands slightly trembling, and unlocked the cuffs. Nina shook out her wrists, flexing her fingers. No drama, no anger, just a quiet moment of return. Marcus stepped back, trying to collect, "You can't just come in here like this and override a lawful stop." The tall agent, his badge now clearly clipped to his lapel, walked up to him. His voice dropped to a low, "Officer Hayes, your stop almost triggered a national security breach. Agent Carter has spent over a year deep undercover tracking something far above you." Marcus didn't respond. He couldn't. His radio buzzed. For a second, he hoped it would dispatch, "Still no hits on that ID. Wait. Hold on, scratch that. We're getting a ping. Secure channel. Stand by." Two Nina stepped past the officers, walking straight toward the man who had addressed her as Agent Carter. The two spoke quietly, barely audible. She seemed to be reporting debriefing, but casually, like they'd planned for this exact kind of failure. The agent looked over her shoulder at the SUV she had been driving. "Did anyone touch the vehicle?" "Just me," said Marcus. "Good. Don't touch it again." Another agent circled around and popped the trunk. Inside, nothing was visible. But he pulled up the floor panel to reveal a case not large, maybe the size of a large book. He opened it. Inside were wires, labels, plastic compartments. Whatever it wasn't for civilian use. "Was she transporting it?" Marcus asked, but didn't finish the sentence. Nina glanced back. "That's classified. Everything's classified with you people." She paused. "Because sometimes the people you're supposed to trust turn out to be the ones selling you out." That made Marcus stiffen. Before he could respond, one of the bystanders shouted, "Yo, what is this, man? She's CIA or something." The agents turned to the small group that had now grown into a full sidewalk crowd. "Cameras, please stop filming," one said firmly.
"Why?" asked the girl in the red hoodie. "So you can pretend this didn't happen." Nina stepped forward. She didn't yell. She didn't make threats. She just looked at the crowd and said, "You have every right to film. Just know what happened here tonight won't stay on the surface for long, and not everything you see is as simple as it looks." Then, without warning, her expression changed. She turned slightly, scanned the crowd, and her eyes landed on someone near the back, a man with a baseball cap pulled low, hoodie zipped up high. He wasn't holding a phone. He wasn't saying a word. Nina's tone dropped. "Target acquired," she whispered into the smartwatch. The agent spun toward where she was looking. The man realized too late. He turned and ran. One of the agents gave chase. Marcus stepped forward, instinctively confused. "Who the hell was that?" "Someone who wasn't supposed to know I was in town," Nina replied. The crowd suddenly stepped back as the man in the hoodie ducked into an alley. The chasing agent drew something from his coat, a launcher of some kind. He fired once. A pop echoed off the brick. Then silence. Seconds later, the agent returned with the man cuffed, limping, slightly blood on his sleeve. His hoodie was partially pulled back, revealing a wire tucked under his shirt. "Tracker, not a mic," the agent confirmed. Nina exhaled sharply. "They were watching for me. The stop wasn't random. They baited me onto this route." Marcus looked at her, stunned. "You're saying someone inside fed your route to them?" She didn't answer directly, just looked at the rookie officer who had cuffed her earlier, then glanced at his belt radio. No words, just a flicker of doubt. But if her route was leaked, then someone inside that precinct wasn't just incompetent. They were working against her. And Nina wasn't about to let that slide. The precinct building on Ashburn Road was quiet that night. Not silent, just quieter than it should have been. She'd left the SUVs and federal agents behind.
They'd taken the captured man into a separate holding facility. Nina had asked for one thing: time alone at the local precinct. She was in her element now. No cuffs, no suits shadowing her. Just her blazer, her badge, and her resolve. The front desk officer looked up as she entered, slightly startled. "Can I help you, ma'am?" Nina didn't stop walking. She flashed a laminated card, then nodded toward the hallway. "Internal audit. Secure the floor." She wasn't here for show. Within 5 minutes, word had spread. Officer Marcus Hayes sat in the break room, a half-eaten microwave burrito on the table, when a fellow officer walked in. "She's here." "Who?" "Monroe." He blinked. "What?" "Here." Walked in like she owned the place. Says she's doing an internal audit. Command told us to cooperate. Marcus swallowed hard and left his food in the hallway. Nina moved like she'd been there before, because in a way she had not this exact building, but others like it. Small-town departments with cracks wide enough for things to slip through unnoticed or ignored. She found what she was looking for: the internal server room. It was locked, but not to her. She pulled a key card from her coat pocket and held it to the scanner. Green light. Door clicked. Inside, she moved quickly, plugged in a drive, downloaded logs. She wasn't there to punish. She was there to trace back. In the main corridor, Marcus caught up to her. "You just walk in here like it's your house now?" he asked. "I don't have time to explain the entire chain of command to you." He stepped in her path. "I deserve to know what's going on." Nina looked at him hard. "You nearly tanked a national security operation. You want me to send you a memo? That's not fair." "I was doing my job." "No. You were doing what you thought your job was. There's a difference." They stared at each other. Then quietly she added, "When I gave you my ID, you assumed I was faking it, not because the badge didn't scan, not because of policy. You just didn't think someone like me could carry it." Marcus opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Nina turned away. "I'm not here to fix you. I'm here to find the leak." But before she could take another step, someone else entered the hallway. Deputy Victor Kane, late 30s, stocky build, perfectly shaved head, uniform too crisp for someone working swing shift. His eyes landed on her and immediately went cold. "Well, well," he said, "the ghost walks among us." Marcus looked between them. "You two know each other?" Nina didn't blink. "He worked with me once overseas. Brief assignment until he disappeared mid-op." Victor smirked. "Disappeared. That's your version. You walked away with a phone full of encrypted contacts and left 3 bodies in a safe house. My version is the only one that made it back." Marcus's jaw tightened. "Wait, he was CIA." "Not anymore," Nina said. Victor's eyes flicked toward her hand. "You still wear the watch. That old trick still work. You'd be surprised how much hasn't changed." He took a step closer. "So what now? You gonna play hero in my precinct?" "I'm not here for show. I came for one reason." She pulled a small device from her coat, a recorder, and pressed play. His voice came through clipped and distorted. "She leaves that drop point by 7:10. She always takes the same route. I can guarantee it." Marcus's face fell. Victor didn't move. "I tapped the signal this morning," Nina said, voice cold. "You've been leaking intel to foreign contacts for months. You fed them my location tonight. Thought you'd finish what you started overseas." Victor laughed just once, then lunged. Marcus moved faster. The 2 men crashed against the wall. Chairs toppled. But Nina didn't panic. She calmly walked up and pulled her badge again. "Victor Kane, you're under arrest for treason, unauthorized foreign collaboration, and obstruction of a federal investigation." He was still trying to swing when 2 more officers rushed in to pin him. As Victor screamed threats and curses, Nina didn't even flinch, because this wasn't the end of the story. It was just the next piece falling into place. The holding cell clanged shut behind Victor Kane with a finality that felt personal. Nina stood on the other side of the bars, eyes steady, arms folded. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Victor was pacing already, trying to reclaim control with his voice, since everything else was now gone. "You think this ends with me?" he snarled. "You think you've won something?" Nina tilted her head slightly. "You're not my endgame. You were just the decoy." He stopped pacing. "What's that supposed to mean?" She took a slow step forward. "The man in the hoodie who followed me tonight wasn't waiting by coincidence. He was placed. You fed my route to someone and they sent him to intercept me. But he didn't recognize me because you gave him an old photo before I cut my hair. That tells me something important. You don't know who's really pulling the strings." He looked shaken for the first time. "You're good at betrayal," Nina continued. "But you're a small player. You always have been, and you just confirmed that." He barked out a laugh, but it didn't land. "You'll never trace it. You think you got the whole thread? You don't even have the needle." She didn't respond. She simply walked away. Outside the cell block, Marcus was waiting. He looked different now. Shoulders slumped, lips pressed in a thin line. "Heard everything. So he was one of yours?" "No. He was one of theirs pretending to be one of mine." Marcus nodded slowly, then added, "Why didn't the system catch his ID? Shouldn't there have been red flags?" Nina sighed. "You'd be surprised what a clean badge and a few months of silence can hide. Victor disappeared off our radar just long enough to make everyone think he was dead or buried. Turns out he'd just changed sides." Marcus rubbed his forehead. "So what happens now?" "We keep going back in." In the evidence room, Nina retrieved the small case from her SUV, the one the agents had found earlier. She opened it again this time with Marcus watching. Inside were photos, maps, coordinates, surveillance stills. There were also recordings audio from tapped calls in languages Marcus couldn't identify, and photos of a man that showed up in every single folder. "That's who I was tracking tonight," she said, tapping the image. "Real name unknown. Goes by Rashad Malik. Freelance operative. Career for several hostile entities. Moves weapons data people." "Why was he here?" Marcus asked. "He doesn't spend time in places like Reston unless someone gives him a reason." Marcus studied the photos. "You think Victor brought him in?" "No, Victor doesn't have the authority or brain power to make that kind of move. But someone used Victor to steer me into that arrest, hoping I'd be flagged, maybe even pulled off assignment." Marcus stepped back, concern evident. "And what if the arrest had gone wrong?" She looked him dead in the eye. "Then you'd be at the center of an international crisis, and I'd probably be dead." The weight of those words hung heavily between them. Finally, Marcus broke the silence. "What do you need from me?" Nina raised an eyebrow. "That's a shift. I didn't know you cared." He smiled slightly. "About Chase. About you, I made assumptions." She studied his face carefully. "You sure you're ready for what helping me actually looks like?" "Try me," Marcus said with quiet determination. Nina nodded once. "Then let's start with surveillance footage. If Rashad was nearby, there's a good chance he's been caught on traffic cams. Get me access." Marcus left the room without another word. Nina stayed behind and tapped her smartwatch. A crackling voice responded through the earpiece, the agent who had chased the man in the hoodie. "We pulled his phone," the voice said. "Encrypted messages. Photos of your SUV taken an hour before the stop. Someone was tracking you long before tonight." Her jaw clenched. "Understood. Keep digging." She hung up, closed the case, and locked it again. But she already knew the truth. If someone had eyes on her before she hit that intersection, the operation wasn't just compromised. It was bleeding from the inside. An hour later, Nina sat alone in the precinct's evidence room. The overhead light hummed faintly. Her fingers moved quickly across the keys of a government-secured laptop. Surveillance feeds, facial recognition, overlays, and time-stamped GPS data blinked across the screen. She didn't need help navigating this part. This was her arena. But what she found made her stomach tighten. Rashad hadn't just been nearby. He'd been parked across from a middle school 4 blocks away. Engine off, windows up. He sat there for 43 minutes, long enough to watch parents pick up their kids, long enough to time police patrols, long enough to plan. She clicked to zoom in on the license plate of the vehicle. It was stolen, not a surprise. But what was surprising was the second man that appeared in the frame. 20 minutes in. Blurry, unidentifiable. But walking up to Rashad's window and handing him a small envelope. Marcus stepped in with a flash drive. Looks like he circled your arrest point twice before your stop. Nina took the drive without looking up. You recognize this man? She asked, tilting the screen toward him. He leaned in hard to tell. Wait, yeah, that's Arthur Vexley. He's a city planner for Fairfax. Has clearance to access traffic systems, public building schematics. He was assigned to a Homeland Security Liaison Committee 2 years ago. Never struck me as dirty. He's not, Nina said. He's compromised. Or being used. Marcus sat down across from her. So, this guy is here. What's his deal? He doesn't think like a terrorist. He moves like a courier. Gets paid to carry classified materials across borders. And if he's here in a city like this working with a guy like Vexley, Marcus said, leaning back in his chair, that means someone's preparing for a transfer. What kind of transfer? The kind that doesn't involve cash or goods. The kind that involves data personnel secrets. She opened another folder on her screen and pulled up a map of several public buildings, a data center, a federal courthouse, a communications hub. All of these are on Vexley's oversight list. All of them experienced power testing delays last week, and all of them use the same internal control contractor, a company called Thermax Solutions. Marcus frowned. That's a federal contractor we've used for traffic light sensors. Exactly, Nina said. Which means if you compromise one Thermax node, you could jump across multiple departments, including law enforcement, which could explain how Chase knew your route. Nina nodded. That's the link. It wasn't just Chase feeding information. It was someone inside the city's infrastructure. The arrest was bait. But it was also cover to distract me while the actual transfer happened elsewhere. She checked the time. And that transfer is happening in the next 2 hours, I guarantee it. Marcus stood. So where do we go? You don't. Not officially. This still falls outside your jurisdiction. But I need access to the city's maintenance tunnels. Vexley has clearance, which means there are likely blind spots only he knows about. He rubbed the back of his neck. You sure you want to go in alone? Nina gave him a dry look. That's the job. Before he could answer, her phone buzzed. It was the agent from earlier. We've got eyes on Rashad again, he said. He's leaving a hardware warehouse on Knox Boulevard carrying something small. He's headed toward the courthouse district. Nina closed the laptop. That's it. That's the transfer. Marcus blocked the door. I'm coming with you. I don't need backup. I'm not backup. I'm a witness. Whatever happens next, I'm not letting this department sit blind anymore. Nina stared at him, then handed him a small pouch. Vest's in there. You'll need it. But even as they prepared to leave, neither of them knew just how deep the tunnel ran, or how close they were to someone willing to destroy lives just to keep one secret buried. Nina and Marcus stepped into the old maintenance tunnel off Frying Pan Road well past midnight. The musty scent of rust and damp concrete clung to the air, mixing with the low hum of distant city life above. Their footsteps echoed sharply against the walls, each tap a reminder of how far beneath the surface they'd descended both literally and figuratively. Nina led the way, flashlight clipped to her collar, casting a narrow beam through the darkness. "Keep your eyes on the corners," she murmured. Rashad moves quiet. Marcus matched her pace, his breath steady but heavy. He hadn't said much since they'd left the precinct, his nerves hidden beneath a veneer of resolve. 50 yards in, they reached a junction. There, standing against the cold concrete wall, was Rashad. Slim, olive-skinned, with light stubble and a leather jacket zipped halfway. His expression was unreadable as he clutched a slim silver case in his left hand. "You're early," he said, voice low but edged with a grin. Nina didn't flinch. "You're sloppy." Rashad's half-smile lingered. "You were always good with words." "Better with guns, though." Marcus glanced sideways at Nina. She didn't respond. She didn't have to. "I want the case," Nina said, stepping forward. Rashad raised an eyebrow. "You think I came all this way to hand it over? You came all this way to live." Those words hung between them as footsteps echoed from above. A storm grate clanged shut. Nina turned her head slightly. "Did you bring someone?" Rashad shrugged slowly. "Just the broker. He doesn't like being seen. Then he shouldn't be in this business." Suddenly a voice called from behind the wall. "You've already lost Monroe." Marcus turned toward the voice as another man stepped into view, Arthur Vexley. Rougher than his photo sweat, slicking his collar gun in hand. "I used to admire your work," he said. "You stayed invisible longer than anyone else I ever tracked." Nina held her ground. "And now you're standing in a drain pipe with a stolen gun and a mouthful of excuses." "I'm standing in the future," Vexley replied. "You're trying to protect a machine that's already broken." Rashad shifted hand, hovering near the case's latch. Nina saw it. "No," she snapped. "You open that case, I end you right here." Marcus raised his sidearm just as Vexley laughed. "You think this ends in gunfire? No. This ends in silence, with your file buried under 10 layers of red tape." "You're leaking personnel movements to foreign networks," Nina said, voice steady. "That case doesn't hold data. It holds access credentials. If it gets out, 6 agents go dark by sunrise." Rashad's expression changed just enough for Nina to know he hadn't been told the full story. "They lied to you," she said softly. "You're not carrying money or trade agreements. You're carrying names. You think they'll let you walk after that?" Rashad's jaw clenched. "I want the case," she repeated. "Or else." She slammed the case into Vexley's ribs. The man collapsed with a grunt, the gun clattering to the ground. Nina lunged forward, grabbed the case, and kicked the weapon away. Rashad raised his hands. "I never agreed to kill anyone. I was told it was clean paper only." Nina stared at him. "You just chose survival. That doesn't make you innocent." He nodded once. "But I'm not your enemy." She didn't answer. Just turned to Marcus. "Call it in." Marcus radioed with a trembling voice. Gave exact location. Requested containment. His eyes darted between Rashad and Vexley, who groaned on the floor trying to sit up. Nina stood still, clutching the case. Then softly she said, "You want to know the worst part?" Marcus looked at her. This wasn't supposed to happen here. This was supposed to be just another pass-through. Quiet. Clean. Now a city was going to burn with questions it wasn't ready to answer. But while the city above still slept, 2 secrets had already been cracked open. And neither Nina nor Marcus had any illusions that those doors would close again by dawn. Inside the courthouse district, a lockdown was underway. Marked cars lined every corner, their presence casting a heavy shadow over the normally bustling area. The press hadn't yet caught wind of the incident, but it was only a matter of time before the story exploded. Inside a sealed briefing room at a federal annex just outside Reston, Nina sat across from two stern-faced officials, one from the Office of Counterintelligence, the other from the Department of Justice. Neither smiled, and both held folders labeled with her name. You broke protocol. One began flipping a page. You compromised a covert assignment, went rogue in a municipal precinct, and coordinated with a civilian officer without formal clearance. Nina leaned forward, her voice unwavering. I also stopped a classified data transfer, neutralized 2 domestic threats, and recovered an access key that would have exposed safe assets across 6 countries. Silence filled the room. The second official cleared his throat. We've reviewed your footage, the body cams, the security cameras, your watch recordings. He looked up. You were right. Nina nodded, though she had already known. Outside the briefing room, Marcus waited near the vending machines, sipping stale coffee. He hadn't slept, and likely wouldn't anytime soon. When Nina emerged, he offered a quick half-smile. They read you the riot act, he said. They tried, she replied, hesitating. So what now? Nina paused, then said, They'll sweep it under the rug, frame it as a local miscommunication. Chase's record will be buried. Vexley's access logs reassigned and Rashad detained under undisclosed cooperation. It'll be sanitized by noon. Marcus exhaled, rubbing his forehead. And you? She gave him a look. I'll be sent somewhere else. My face is burned here. Marcus leaned against the wall. I know I'm not supposed to say this, but... Nina raised an eyebrow. For what? For the stop. For not recognizing the weight you carry. She studied him a moment longer. You made a bad call, she said, but you didn't double down on it. That's what counts. He swallowed hard. You could have gotten killed. But I didn't. And maybe now neither will someone else. Together they walked out as the sun pierced the skyline, casting long orange streaks across the concrete. Across town, social media erupted. A bystander's video of Nina being handcuffed went viral overnight, amassing over 800,000 views. Heated debates filled the comments, some defending the officers, others outraged by the treatment of a federal agent based solely on suspicion. News outlets branded it the Reston incident, piling on questions. Why hadn't her ID scanned properly? Why was there no better verification process for undercover personnel? Why did it take backup agents to de-escalate a situation that never should have escalated? But the real question no one dared to ask aloud, was this. How many agents like Nina Monroe never make it to the part where someone listens? Nina watched the headlines scroll across a nearby shop's TV screen. She didn't smile, but she didn't look away. Later that afternoon, Chase Lorne was transferred to a secure federal detention facility in Quantico. No bail, no press coverage, just gone. Arthur Vexley resigned his city planning post, citing health concerns. By the time reporters arrived, his home was cleared and no cameras were allowed inside. Rashad was taken to a black site in Maryland. He wouldn't appear in any court records, but according to the agent who later met with Nina, he was cooperative, whatever that meant. Marcus returned to his shift 3 days later. He drove slower, watched more closely, thought longer. The next time he pulled someone over, he triple-checked their ID and looked at the person, really looked. But Nina was already gone. Her name cleared, her mission intact, and the world none the wiser except maybe one small town that wouldn't soon forget her face. Her SUV rolled quietly along winding back roads outside Reston. She didn't use GPS, didn't need to. Her directions came through coded channels few would ever know existed. A new assignment waited 3 states away. She had just enough time to breathe before going under again. The trees blurred past her window, but her mind wasn't on the scenery. It was on the question Marcus had asked before she left. Does this ever get easier? She hadn't answered then, not because she didn't know, but because the truth wasn't something you said out loud in a hallway. Now, hours later, she whispered to herself, No. But you stop expecting it to. If this story moved you, If it made you pause and rethink, don't forget to subscribe. There are more real stories, more voices that matter coming your way. Because sometimes justice doesn't come with headlines or parades. It comes with a second longer to think. And maybe that second saves a life. Would you stand your ground like Nina Monroe? Or do you believe sometimes it's better to stay silent? Drop your thoughts below and let's talk. This is Soulful Stories 4, where every story holds power.